I got to try a different roll of film and I found it quite interesting to shoot with. Gave some interesting results. You might find it interesting as well. And that's the Rollei Infrared 400 black and white film. Let me explain my infrared background. Before I talk about my infrared background, I just want to kind of update you a little bit on the channel. I am switching to Hasselblad. I've got a lens, a 120, a back has arrived. I've ordered film. I've bought a camera. It's in shipping. I'm currently looking for a 50mm lens for the Hasselblad system. So I think the one I'm looking for is a CFI 50F4. It's got the floating elements. Now you might have one sitting around thinking, boy, you know, I was thinking of selling this. Why don't you just leave something in the comments or email me if you want? Because I'm looking for a good 50mm CFI Hasselblad lens. So I'm going to do some videos about switching to Hasselblad, what I've learned there. I'm going to do some videos. I've been shooting a lot of moving water, waterfalls, rapids, things like that, kind of what I've learned from shooting waterfalls. And I've got a couple of lens tests I'm doing as well. So I have multiple lenses. So I've got 250s for the Leica. I'll just do some comparisons there. I've got some Nikon lenses I want to do a little review on. So those are coming soon to the channel. Lens reviews, moving water, and this kind of switch migration to the Hasselblad system. So things to look forward to. Now let's get back to the infrared. In my experience with infrared, it started with a film called Kodak high-speed infrared. This was decades ago. This film was discontinued in 2007. I actually used it for some commercial assignments back in the day. And then it was discontinued and no one cared because no one was really shooting it anymore. About 4 or 5 years ago, someone gave me half a dozen rolls. This is the last roll. I've shot all the other rolls. They were all duds. They were all base fog off the scale. Never could get a printable negative from any of them. I'm not sure how they were fogged. They could have been 30 years old. I mean, it just was unusable. So I have one roll left. This is one of the few rolls left in the wild. Now, with this film, this Kodak film, you had to load it in the darkroom, total darkness. You couldn't even open the canister in light. It had to be all done in the darkness. So when I open this, I'm going to ruin this film. I don't care. They're all ruined. These ones that the guy gave me, they were all ruined. But anyways, it gives you an idea. This is Kodak's high-speed infrared. You're supposed to be seeing this in the dark, which is hard to do. It's a weird-looking film. It's super thin, and there's no anti-halation backing, which means that it's basically light is moving through the trailer into the cassette, fogging it. Maybe that's where, maybe all the rolls that I had just been opened and therefore fogged. Anyways, this one's now ruined, but they were ruined anyways. So that was where we all started with Kodak high-speed infrared. And then Ilford has SFX 200, which is sort of infrared, but doesn't really give enough infrared effect for my liking. So there is an Ilford product. And then, of course, you can get a digital camera and modify it to infrared. To me, it doesn't give enough effect. It's interesting, but it just doesn't give enough effect. So I think if you really want that infrared look, maybe this Rollei Infrared is the way to go. It seems to be easily available. Order it online, go to your camera store. So Rollei Infrared, maybe this is the solution that we're all looking for. Now with any infrared film, you have to use an infrared filter. I happen to use B+W. There's other brands as well. This is the B+W 092 filter. So it looks black. It's super dark, maybe 5-6 stops. If you held it up to the sun, you would see that it's actually a little bit red, but very dark. You put that on your taking lens. So I have one for the 25mm lens and the 35mm lens. They happen to be different filter sizes. You put that on your lens. Now your meter reading is done through that filter, which is key to getting great exposures. I set this film to ISO 200. It's a 400 film, but I was recommended to shoot at 200, so that's what I did. Your exposure times are probably going to be quarter second, half a second, so you're going to want to be on a tripod. You're going to want to use a cable release, right, on a tripod because of these long exposure times. And you probably want to use like F11 or F16. Infrared light focuses on a different plane than visible light. So you focus conventionally, say on this barn, you focus on the barn, say it's 30 feet away, and then you modify the focus distance, move it a little bit closer because of the infrared light. So there's usually a little line, a red line or a red R or something that indicates on the lens, once you've got the focus set, that you would refocus against this little line or R. Now the Zeiss lenses don't seem to have it, but the Nikon lenses do and the Leica lenses do, so it's quite common, just not on this lens. So you're focusing and then you're readjusting the focus a little bit, and I would slot the aperture down just to get as much depth of field as well. Again, even with a 25mm lens, you want as much depth of field as you can get. Now, the camera that I like to use, you can use any camera that'll take the filter, but you put that on an SLR, it's dark. You can't, well, you can meter, but you can't see the subject. You can't really compose because it's so dark. You can't see it very well. But on a rangefinder, the taking lens has the filter, but you're viewing through the viewfinder, you're metering through the viewfinder, you're composing through the viewfinder, so it's great for shooting infrared. I like to use a rangefinder. I've also used a twin lens camera like a Rollei or a Yashica, because you put the filter on the taking lens, which is where the meter is reading through, but you're focusing and composing without the filter on, which is so much brighter and easier to do. So it's great on a rangefinder or a twin lens. It certainly will work on an SLR. Maybe you have to focus and then add the filter if it's just too dark. Now the funny thing about infrared is the composition. Composition is still king. You've still got to take a great composition. You can't rely on the infrared trick, the infrared look, to save a lousy composition. Composition is king. So you've got to have a strong composition and making it an interesting photo, and it just becomes more interesting with the infrared effect. It's like people who shoot with a tintype camera. They're making tintypes, or they're making glass plate negatives, and they're shooting large format. It's great if it's an interesting photo. That technique adds to it. But if it's just a boring photo, like it's a headshot, it's still just a headshot. Just because you use some weird technique doesn't save it. Infrared is like that. Composition is king, and then you add the interest of the infrared part. Now, as I mentioned, I shot this at ISO 200 on a tripod, metering through the camera. That'd give me the shutter speed of, say, half a second. I didn't bracket, but I shot one at half a second, and then I opened up a stop, and then I opened up a stop. I didn't really need to do that because, as it turns out, shooting at ISO 200 gave me a great negative anyways, so a good starting point. Now, with the subjects that I shot, I needed probably better light. And with infrared, you really want full sun, and you really want a lot of trees, like maple trees with big leaves and greenery and that. Really something to get that infrared effect. So when I shot this barn, I didn't really have the right lighting, and maybe it wasn't a great spot to be doing infrared. I should have been maybe in the trees more, but I was excited to try the film out. So I shot a little bit around this barn. Again, I needed better lighting, more direct lighting, angular lighting. And then I shot with the 25, I shot with the 35. You know, these are kind of the results that I got. So the next time I went out, again with the 25mm lens and the 35mm lens, and with the 25, I actually used the viewfinder on top. So again, it gets past that weird dark filter. I'm viewing and composing with the viewfinder on top. The next time I went out, there was these reeds, and I thought it was a much better infrared effect. The sky has gone black. The reeds are got a nice glow to them. The clouds look interesting. So I thought it was a better effect and a better result. Again, on a tripod, focusing, recomposing, changing the focus a little bit closer, and a bit of bracketing. So as I mentioned, it's a new film to me, and to get the processing time, I was using Kodak X-Tall. So I went to the giant development chart, and that gave me a rough idea of the development time. So this is the giant chart. You could Google it, a giant development chart, and you plug in the film that you're using, and you plug in the developer that you're using, and it will give you a starting point. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's a good starting point, and that's what I used. And that chart is very useful to get you in the ballpark if you're trying new film combinations. film developer combinations. So in the end, I was excited with the results. I thought it was an interesting start. I'm going to go buy a few more rolls. I'm going to try it and see where else I can take this. I've already got the filters, so I'll just get some more film. Maybe you'll find it interesting as well. And that's the Rollei Infrared film. Black and white film. It's basically ISO 400. I shot it at 200. Get yourself the infrared, super dark red filters. Go out and have some fun. Try to get some interesting results.